The first time I understood what my father actually did for a living, I was standing in a fluorescent-lit corridor on the third floor of a government building in London. The carpet was the color of a bad cup of tea. The air smelled of toner and silence. I was 27 years old. My father had been dead for 11 months. The solicitor's name was Mr. Hemsworth, a man whose face looked like it had never been surprised by anything, including death. He slid a beige folder across the desk. It was the kind of folder that had a string wrapped around a tiny cardboard button. Very official. Very final. "This is the last of it," he said. "Your father's estate is now cleared. These are the remaining documents: birth certificates, property transfers, a few pension letters. Standard paperwork." I nodded. I had signed so many things over the past year that my signature no longer felt like my own. It had become a reflex, a little squiggle of surrender. Mr. Hemsworth hesitated. That was unusual. Hesitation did not belong in this room. "There is one more thing," he said. "It's not part of the legal file. But, your father left a note for you. Taped to the back of a folder from 1989. He handed me a yellow envelope. On the front, in my father's small, careful handwriting, the handwriting of a man who had learned English as a fourth language, were 3 words: "For my daughter." I did not open it there. I waited until I was outside, standing on the pavement near Holborn, where the wind was sharp enough to make your eyes water. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a photograph. Old. Faded. The kind of photo that had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. And, underneath it, a single sheet of paper covered in my father's handwriting. But, not a letter. Not really. It was a list. Dates. Times. File numbers. Bureaucratic codes. And, at the bottom, written in red ink that had faded to pink, "It's behind the forms. You'll have to undo what I did. I'm sorry." I stood there for a long time, holding that photograph, not yet understanding what I was looking at. A child. A bicycle. A wall that wasn't a wall, it was a border. Or it used to be. The wind turned the page over in my hands. That's when I saw the stamp. An official seal. Faded purple ink. Dated August 19, 1989. I had never seen my father cry. But, I had seen him stare at walls for hours. Now I knew why. The paperwork wasn't just paperwork. It was a hiding place. Let me tell you about that photograph. It was taken in the summer of 1989. I was 6 years old. My father was 31. We were living in West Berlin at the time, in a cramped apartment near Kreuzberg. My father worked as a translator for a small trade office. That's what he told people. That's what he told me. The truth was more complicated. My father was a smuggler. But, not of money or drugs or weapons. He smuggled stories. On the night of November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. I remember the television flickering in our living room. I remember my mother crying. I remember my father not moving. He just stood there, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching people climb the wall with hammers and joy. But, the photograph in my hand wasn't from November. It was from August. 3 months before the wall came down. In the photo, I am riding a rusty bicycle on a dirt path. Behind me, there is a checkpoint. But, the gate is open. Not broken. Not guarded. Just, open. And, I am smiling. Not a posed smile. A real one. The kind of smile a child has when they don't know they are being watched. On the back of the photo, my father had written, August 19, 1989. The day she rode through. No one stopped her. I turned the photo over again. And, again. As if the paper would start talking. Here is what I learned later, after weeks of digging through the files my father had left behind, after translating documents from German to English to Polish and back again. On August 19, 1989, a small border crossing near Sopron, Hungary, was opened for a few hours during a political picnic. It was supposed to be a symbolic gesture. But my father, who was working as an interpreter for a group of East German refugees, saw something else. He saw a gap. A crack in the machine. He took me on that bicycle because he thought no one would stop a man with a small child. He was right. We rode through. We rode into Austria. And, then, we came back before anyone noticed. That one bicycle ride became a blueprint. My father spent the next 3 months smuggling maps, letters, and escape routes across the border, hidden inside diplomatic pouches, under car seats, behind framed photographs of officials he pretended to respect. When the wall finally fell, my father did not celebrate. He went to work the next day. He signed forms. He filed reports. He buried the truth under so much paperwork that even he forgot where he had hidden it. Until now. The photograph was the key. The paperwork was the lock. And I had just inherited both. The National Archives at Kew are not like the movies. There is no dramatic music. No dusty old men with magnifying glasses. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels like a held breath. I went there on a Tuesday in February. It was raining. It is always raining in my memory of that day. I had spent 3 nights decoding my father's list. He had used a system: file numbers mixed with dates, references to birth certificates that didn't exist, land registries for properties he never owned. It took me 2 sleepless nights and a phone call to a retired archivist in Leipzig to realize what he had done. My father had hidden the photograph inside a legal file. But, not just any file. He had attached it to the paperwork for his own naturalization as a British citizen. Think about that for a second. To become a citizen, my father had to prove he was loyal. He had to sign declarations. He had to list every country he had ever visited, every job he had ever held, every organization he had ever supported. And, in the middle of that mountain of loyalty, he had tucked a photograph of himself breaking through a border with his daughter on a bicycle. The ceremony. The paperwork. The oath. All of it was real. But, behind it, hidden like a secret heartbeat, was the truth of who he really was, a man who had spent his life opening doors that were supposed to stay closed. At the archives, I requested the file. The woman at the desk looked at me with polite boredom. "That will take 45 minutes, she said. It took 2 hours. When the box finally arrived, my hands were shaking. I didn't know why. My father was dead. The wall had been gone for over 30 years. None of this mattered anymore. Except it did. Inside the box, behind a stack of immigration forms and medical certificates and tax records, there was a manila envelope. Taped shut. Marked with a single word in my father's handwriting: Freiheit. Freedom. I opened it carefully, the way you open something you are afraid to break. The photograph was there. The same one he had left me. But there was also a second photograph. One I had never seen. In this one, my father was young. Maybe 25. He was standing in front of a concrete wall at night, holding a small radio. Behind him, a group of people were climbing over barbed wire. His face was serious. Not scared. Just determined. On the back, 1979. I was the translator. They were the brave ones. I sat in that reading room for 3 hours, going through every page. The naturalization certificate. The oath of allegiance. The letter from the Home Office approving his application. And, then, at the very bottom, a handwritten note my father had never sent to anyone. It said, "I swore loyalty to this country." And, I meant it. But, my first loyalty was always to the idea that no wall should last forever. That photograph is my real passport. The rest is just paper. I closed the box. The rain had stopped outside. The reading room was still silent. But, for the first time since my father died, I felt like I could hear him. Document 4 of 5 Part 4. The day I almost burned it. I don't know what I expected to feel when I finally held the truth in my hands. Relief? Closure? A movie-style moment where everything makes sense? Instead, I felt angry. Angry that my father had carried this secret for 30 years. Angry that he had never told me the story behind the bicycle ride. Angry that he had hidden himself inside paperwork, layer after layer, until even he didn't know where the real man ended and the official version began. I took the files home. I spread them across my kitchen table. For 3 days, I just looked at them. The photograph of me at 6 years old, grinning on a rusty bike. The photograph of my father at 25, helping strangers cross a border in the dark. And then, I almost burned them. It sounds dramatic, I know. But, I was tired. Tired of carrying my father's secrets. Tired of being the person who had to untangle a knot he had spent a lifetime tying. I took the photographs and the papers out to the garden. I put them in a metal bucket. I held a lighter in my hand. But, I couldn't do it. Not because I forgave him. Not because I understood him. But, because of something he had written on the back of the second photograph, in letters so small I almost missed them. If you are reading this, I am gone. Please don't be angry. I didn't hide this from you to hurt you. I hid it because I wanted you to have a normal life. A safe life. No walls. No borders. No midnight runs. I gave up the story so you could have the silence. I hope that was the right choice. I don't know. I was just a translator who got lucky once. I put the lighter down. I sat in the garden until it got dark. And then, I went inside and started making phone calls. Document 5 of 5 Part 5. The wall inside the chest. It took me another 6 months to finish what my father started. Not the smuggling. The telling. I found the people in the second photograph. 3 of them were still alive. 1 lived in Canada. 1 in Australia. 1 in a small town in Bavaria, in a house with a garden full of sunflowers. I called them. I sent them copies of the photograph. I listened to their stories. The woman in Bavaria, her name was Ilona. She was 19 in that photograph. She had been pregnant when she climbed over the barbed wire. Her daughter was now older than Ilona had been that night. When I sent her the picture, she called me and cried for 20 minutes without saying a word. Your father, she finally said, didn't just translate words. He translated fear into hope. There is no certificate for that. I kept the paperwork. All of it. The naturalization forms. The oath. The letters. But, I stopped seeing them as a hiding place. I started seeing them for what they really were, a frame. Because here is the thing about freedom. It doesn't live in grand gestures or famous speeches. It lives in small, quiet places. A bicycle ride through an open gate. A radio passed through a fence. A photograph tucked behind an immigration form, waiting for someone to find it. My father spent his whole life filling out forms. He signed his name on 1,000 dotted lines. He swore oaths in rooms with bad carpet and worse lighting. And, behind all of that, behind the ceremony and the bureaucracy and the careful, quiet obedience, he kept one small piece of chaos. A photograph of a 6-year-old girl on a rusty bicycle, riding through a border that wasn't supposed to be open. He called it Freiheit. I call it the only truth that ever mattered. I still have the file. It sits on my desk now, next to my own paperwork. My lease. My tax returns. My passport application. And every time I sign something, every time I check a box or swear to something I only half believe, I think of him. The wall came down 36 years ago. But, the one inside my father's chest never did. He carried it until the day he died. And, now I carry the photograph. Not as a burden. As a key.